Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, it's time to stand up and praise the Holy One. It is episode 3 of the Saturday Sermon College Football Show. Nick, how you feeling this week?
Another day, another dollar.
Another day, another dollar, another holler.
Just ready. Just ready
Nice,
for
man.
some ball again, man. It was an awesome week one. I'm jacked at the result of my squad, as you know.
Yeah,
Ready to get it going. Saw some really good things. Saw some really bad things out of some good teams.
agree.
I mean, FSU just false prophets, like I said.
Man, there's a couple teams that played pretty poorly this weekend that I'm ready to dive into and talk about a little bit more in depth. But I will tell you, I think some teams didn't play up to. I don't think I think a few teams that played horrible this weekend that are top contenders did not play as well as they could, but they still played well and there were still flashes. I think there's a couple teams we'll talk about later on that are going to have a big week this week, but we'll dive into that when we talk about the schedule for this coming up week. But number one thing on the agenda today, Nick, is what did you do this weekend for college football Saturday?
I drank some whiskey.
Nice.
I
What kind? Do you have one that you prefer, or
Old 47, just a basic Midwest boy, Southern Illinois. Some Jack Daniels. I went over to Brandon's house, watched some ball in the garage, and
shout out to Bo?
yeah, shout out to little Bo. He was there for a while. Slipped a little JD in the bottle, the baby bottle.
No, you didn't.
I'm
Don't
just
say
kidding.
that.
I didn't do that. I
Don't
didn't
say
do
that.
that. I didn't do that.
Sorry, you two. You didn't do that. It's fine.
Um, yeah, no, it was awesome. Just, I mean, you couldn't write it up any better. I mean, besides Penn State's game going like 5 hours, I didn't think they were going to finish it. For a minute, they were talking.
Yeah.
I was reading things they were talking about not, and I don't. I mean, the game wasn't that big of a like a. I mean, they were winning by like 2 touchdowns at the time, so it wasn't, you know, not like it was like a because there was a game. I can't remember which one it was. It was like 30-0, and then they called it.
Yeah, I was. That rain delay was ridiculous. When they kept showing like recaps of what it looked like in the stadium during the rain delay, it was pretty harsh. It was coming down pretty hard.
That looks
Um,
like the apocalypse. Like
it was rough.
it was scary out there. But either way, happy they finished it. I was a little nervous with those breaks are weird. As a player, as a coach, like you got to be kind of locked in, but you can't be too locked in and overhyped and jacked up.
Yeah,
It's a weird environment, especially being on the road. But I think this one actually, you know, affected West Virginia a little more than it did Penn State. But
I agree.
nevertheless, it's a dub. I'll take it.
It is. It is. And it was a beautiful dub they got. But we'll talk about that here in a minute. But what I did this weekend is I had finally had that weekend that I wanted to have in week 0 this week. Was super excited to wake up at 9 o'clock in the morning and get a cup of coffee. Actually, I went to Seven Brew, a local coffee spot here in town, and got my wife and I a coffee. Of course, I had to get a latte, because it was going to be Victory Latte for Tennessee. But had a fun, action-packed day, man. Started, watching college football game day when it came on. Watched the Barstool College Football Show just for some betting tips and all that good stuff. Had all 7 TVs outside in the garage going this weekend, which, man, that felt so good. Just having all the TVs lit up, having games on all the TVs, having a great time. Some beers were flowing, I'm not going to lie. Had some big deal brews this weekend, which was super exciting because I can never find them, which is Spit and Chicklets beer, if you know anything about that. I barbecued. Man, I made so many brats. It was unreal. We're still eating on the brats tonight. Made some burgers, had some friends come over, and just really enjoyed watching the games. My son had a pool party outside. Our friends have a child that came over, and they swam together and had a great time and stuff. But I kept going halfway in, halfway out of the garage so I can watch the game and also watch my son and my wife enjoy each other while, the pool party was going on. And, man, another thing I did this weekend, I also had wrestling on. And you know how I am with wrestling. I'm a huge professional wrestling fan. I actually had wrestling on my computer. Very, very rare for me to replace wrestling off or take wrestling off of a TV and move it to a smaller screen, but had to. It was week 1 of college football, and I was super excited about the kickoff. Man, this weekend beat last weekend by far. Personally, I was so happy with how this weekend turned out with games and stuff like that. I think we saw a lot of stuff from a lot of good teams, and then I think we saw a few few good teams kind of crap the bed. So let's jump into the Week 1 recap. First game we're going to talk about, Nick, and I'll let you start off on this one. Colorado versus North Dakota State University with a final score of 31-26. Nick, what are your thoughts on this game?
Not shocked by it. You knew that North Dakota State was going to come out and be locked in. They are a well-coached program. They're very disciplined. So it wasn't a surprise that they went out and kind of punched Colorado in the mouth a little bit initially. As we had talked about as well, when you have two Heisman caliber kids on your football program and I mean, great FCS program, but FCS program nevertheless. They just didn't have the athletes, and that was the difference maker. They did their starting safety is one of their best players over there, North Dakota State. He didn't play. And what did you get? You had Shador Sanders just going straight over the top. Like, I mean, he's going to be a threat at doing that every single week, but now you're playing a second string FCS secondary. There's not much you can do there.
I agree. I mean, North Dakota State's quarterback played a hell of a game as well. I will say that. Everyone keeps talking about Shador coming out of the game, but North Dakota State's quarterback really had a great game. I think he won. I think he won FCS Player of the Week. FCS Player of the Week last week, if I'm not mistaken. His play was outstanding, but man, you can't overlook though Shador. I mean, 26 for 34, 445 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, and that interception was not his fault. I don't know if you saw it. It was kind of a fluky interception.
It was crazy.
It literally was on the ground, bounced out of a kid's hand, and literally went flying into the defense.
Well, see, I saw that happen. I'm thinking these plays happen against teams that get upset.
Yep, I
You know
agree.
when the stars align?
What was that in the second quarter, right? First or second
That
quarter,
was
right?
no, I think that was the start of the third.
Oh,
They drove it straight downfield, got into red zone. Boom.
one of
Pick.
the things we talked about last week, though, is North Dakota State was going to make this game a dogfight. And I
Oh
said
yeah.
North Dakota State was going to make the game a dogfight, and I think the athletes of Colorado were going to show up in the second half of the game, primarily the fourth quarter, which honestly is what really happened. One thing I will say coming out of this game, Travis Hunter, man, I mean, we got to give him a quick little round of applause. I'm not on the Colorado hype train, but to play as many snaps as he played, I think he missed one snap because of a loose helmet. Other than that, I mean, he played every snap offense and defense that he was on the field, that he was able to play. And man, the kid is a great player. I think he's got more of an upside in the NFL as a wide receiver, as a slot wide receiver than a corner. But that kid is such a great college football player, and I think without him, I don't think Shador is the guy that he is. On the other hand, Jimmy Horn Jr. had 7 catches,
He had a
198
great
yards. He had an
He was
incredible game.
he was a game changer.
But I mean, those 3 touchdown catches by Travis Hunter and that
The one
catch,
contested,
that one,
yeah,
yes,
stupid.
that was insane. But I mean, I think Colorado has their hands full this week with Nebraska. Excuse me. But man, what a way to start your season! What a fun game to start the college football season. Another fun game that happened that same
Wait,
night.
before you jump too far, I think there's a couple things that are still important to mention
Yeah,
about this one is we've talked about Dion's coaching decisions.
yeah.
What are you doing taking a shot there? He said we said had an opening, we got to be aggressive. No. That could have easily cost them the football game. They punted the ball with almost 2 minutes left on the clock
Yep.
against a well-oiled machine that is disciplined and that is going to do every single thing right. Run the damn football, give him the ball back with 20 seconds.
Yeah.
This is going, see, he can build the greatest roster he wants to build, but at the end of the day, you can't make decisions like that against good teams.
I
It's
agree.
going to cost you. And, we talk about it too, like he's new, relatively new to coaching, but I mean, brother, you're coaching in the Big 12. You are coaching in FBS football.
And you got a lot of eyes on you right now as a head coach.
You can't
And
make those
you can't
decisions.
make
And
those
he
errors.
has
Yep.
this is a pattern. I mean, this is a clear pattern stemming from last year where then he comes in and justifies the decision. It's like, no, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and also another thing I will say, kind of more on the positive end about Colorado. We're going to talk about takeaways from the game. Their offensive line played really well. For where they were last year to where they are this year, that is a completely different offensive line, I will say. Um, I was impressed by him. Of course, I was impressed by my boy, but I was impressed by him for the most part.
Let's see what happens when they play a formidable
They
FBS
they have to tighten up their
defense.
defense. They have to tighten up their defense. There's no
The
reason why
defense did not look any better than it did last year.
they did not. And I'll tell you what, their offense did. Their offense looked well. Their offense looked great. I'm hoping this is not another USC situation where they try to get into dogfight shootouts with every single team that they play. Because if they do, they're going to be a 4 or 5 win team this year. I will say that with their schedule. But going on to the next game, another game that we were super excited about was North Carolina and Minnesota. Man, this was a very close game. This was a fun game. The final score was 19-17. It literally came down to a kicker. North Carolina, I think, in my opinion, is going to have a rough one moving forward. Yes, the ACC's down, but with Max Johnson being out, I don't know if their backup has much to I don't have much to work with for the
That
team. And
that that
I think you
looked
texted me
like
that night and said this backup quarterback's not going to win the game. Amarion Hampton's going to win the game, and it's true. I mean, Amarion Hampton had way too many carries that
so
game. He carried that team to victory. I mean, 30 carries, 129 yards, 30 carries in college. That's a lot. That's a lot of impact on your body. That's a lot of damage
Monty
on your
Ball,
body. It's
Monty Ball,
Monty Ball type stuff.
Monty
Yes,
Ball. And honestly, when we were talking about Colorado with Travis Hunter, it's the same thing, man. I'm like, this kid can play doing this, but at what cost does it affect these kids? But yeah, I mean, so I on the pod last week, I said let's go with Minnesota. But what did I do? In our little picks,
our little college football poll, Nick, you went straight with North Carolina.
and this was a game, this was a daytime decision, like day of the game.
I feel like you were
And
texting me your thoughts as you were going through the process of
well,
picking a team.
so my ultimate deciding factor was the running back. And Minnesota had some guys that were pending on injury, and their running back didn't play. And that was a huge loss to them. Um, Granted, I didn't expect Max Johnson to be injured, and they played with a JV quarterback. I mean, but nevertheless, I mean, they squeaked one by.
Yeah.
It was one of those. It was like the game last year when they played against Nebraska. It was no offense, field position, kick a field goal. But for whatever reason, it was entertaining to watch.
I agree, but the thing about North Carolina, my two biggest takeaways of this game is kind of something I mentioned last week. I think North Carolina is going to really struggle without Drake May or a guy of the caliber at quarterback like Drake May. But my absolute biggest takeaway, and we have so much Ryan Day hate on this podcast. My biggest takeaway is PJ Fleck looked like Ronald McDonald with that god awful tie he had on. I would be embarrassed if I was his wife to walk out to the stadium and see my husband wearing that McDonald's themed tie. Um, I'm not a PJ Fleck fan. I have never wanted to row any boats. I've never wanted
You know how
to
I feel about that,
do all
man.
that thing. I think PJ's kind of a cornball. I respect what he did at Western Michigan, but I think he's kind of a cornball, and that Ronald McDonald tie really, really capped it off for me this weekend. What about you? What's your biggest takeaways of the game?
PJ Fleck is a cult leader. He might be a reptile.
He has every double wing high school coach looking up to that guy. I feel like every
I know
Illinois,
some.
I know
I
every,
coached with some.
I know every IHSA coach who runs that double wing
Oh
offense at a
my
small
God.
school. They all say row the boat, and they all use that mantra and stuff like that because PJ Fleck is a home state guy. But man, that
He's
guy,
a cult leader.
he's a cult leader who has a weird
I
cult
think he
following.
might be. I mean, watching him on the sidelines, his eyes were like sunken into his freaking head. I don't know if he's like I always just pictured him as a cult leader. I mean, you've heard a lot of the weird stuff happen in Minnesota,
He's
but I
just a
mean,
weird
just
guy.
looking at him, I'm like, I
Honestly,
think
what a
this guy
perfect
might be like a reptile or like an alien with.
a reptilian. What?
Yes,
Sorry,
yes.
YouTube, don't flag us. I promise we're not spreading false information. PJ Fleck is one of those guys that I feel like he is what his appearance portrays him to be. I feel
Oh
like he's the
yeah,
same way in the locker room, in team meetings, that he is on the field. I feel like he shows up every day in a tie. I mean, he'll go to practices probably in a dress shirt or in a regular T-shirt and stuff like that. But I feel like when he's walking around campus and stuff like that, he's got a tie on. He's got that Ronald McDonald tie on. He's selling hamburgers. He's selling McDoubles. He's selling McChickens. He's making all that stuff. He just, God, what a perfect place for him is Minnesota. I mean, Minnesota is a weird place in general. PJ Fleck fits into that job perfectly. But, it was a great, first couple days of college football, but we got our real full day of college football on Saturday. And one of the big games I wanted to talk about was number 14 Clemson at the time, at number 1 Georgia at the time. The final score was 34-3. Nick, what was your takeaways from this game? But before you give yours, I just want to say one thing. Cade was awful. Cade was awful. So go ahead. What's your takeaways of this game?
What's that Nate Diaz quote? Not surprised, mother. Yeah,
I'm not
that
surprised, mother effort. Yep.
that.
And that was after
I
the
mean,
Conor
I told you
McGregor. That was after Conor McGregor won, right? Yep, that was after he choked him out with the rear naked choke. But sorry,
after he beat Conor McGregor.
yes, the first time.
Either way, this is a college football show. I'm not surprised one bit. I mean, I told you last week. I said they're not ready to play on the same level as Georgia. I said they'd win by 17. They won by almost double that.
Yeah,
Clemson's down bad, and Georgia. I think this also. I think this shows you also that Georgia is. I mean, there's been all this talk about Oregon, Ohio State. Georgia's Georgia, man, and they're gonna keep Georgia in until someone makes them stop.
one thing I will say though about Georgia is that Carson Beck truly played like a guy who deserves to be in New York this weekend. And I mean,
Not
their
surprised.
their next game. I mean, they don't really have a tough draw their next game either. I mean, they play. Who do they play again? They play. Is it Tennessee Tech? Yeah, or middle. No, they play Tennessee Tech this week, I believe. And with that, I mean, he should have a similar stat line in the first half of that game. He really
Yeah,
went out and
I'll give it to Georgia for actually playing some competition week one as
yeah,
opposed to
cakewalk
the
schedule.
rest of as opposed to the rest of the SEC who plays Division 3 schools.
Yep,
So
I agree. So one of the things I will say is, imagine if ETN would have played. Wow, I feel like
it would not
they
have
had
been
him.
close at the
They
first in the first half.
And the thing
I
is, they
mean,
had him dressed, and they kept mentioning on the broadcast they never gave him a duration of his suspension. His suspension was
it
as
was never
long
a
as
suspension.
as long as Kirby wanted to hold him out. And I thought that listening to that, I thought it meant if Georgia was in trouble in the second half of the game, ETN was going to come in and play. They're going to hold him probably out this week as well. I'd assume. I mean, there's no reason to really put any tread on his tires at this point this week. Keep practicing him, keep getting ready for when they get into tougher competition. But there's no reason to play
I
him this
thought
week.
they played him. Didn't they play him last week? They ended up putting him in.
Did
I
they?
thought.
What quarter was that?
Oh, it was early. Hold
I
on a second.
I didn't think he had
Huh?
any carries last week.
I hold on a second, because I thought we were talking about in the group message that they ended up playing him.
Yeah, no. Looking at the stats, Nick, they didn't play him. They had him dressed, and they kept mentioning that. I mean, they never
Okay,
gave
so
him a
maybe it
duration
was
to his
he dressed.
suspension.
I
Yeah,
still I was bouncing back between that and Penn State, but
yeah, but I mean, imagine if he would have played. Imagine how good how much better they would have been as a complete offense. I mean, their team in general. I mean, against Clemson, who is a tough first round, game to play, our first week one game to play. I mean, they played well. They played awesome. They showed that they are a very much front runner for the national championship this year. So,
I mean they're
any
ranked one, and that's well deserved after this. I mean
I agree.
they
Toughest
played
game,
better than toughest
toughest
game, and they
toughest game.
played
They
the
played
most
better.
complete football game.
Yep.
Um, yeah, man, I Dab Dabo.
Dabo. So let's get into that hot topic. I know you wanted to save it for the hot topic section, but man,
No, let's just run it. We'll run it right now, man.
we're running right now. It's perfect.
He
Dabo.
is
So before you get started on what you want to get on your rant on, my thing about Dabo is a great coach. Dabo is a great coach, and
football
everyone's and
coach.
every a football
X's and
coach.
O's,
Yes.
100%.
Everyone wants to talk about how he needs to adapt with the times. My opinion on that is he shouldn't have to adapt to the times. I think college football has gotten so out of hand that It's forcing people to adapt with the times that don't feel comfortable with it, and I feel Dabo is one of those guys that is holding out of the last. He's one of the last pure college football coaches that truly love the sport of college football, in my opinion. I don't think they are dipping into the NIL a little bit, but the transfer portal, all that stuff, that's not for Dabo. He wants to build the guys that he has. He wants to develop the guys that he has, and he wants his guys that he have to have success. And he's a great guy. I salute him for being a great guy, but I think this is going to they're going to run into some roadblocks because of the fact that he's not doing what every other coach is doing. I respect the hell out of it. I understand why he's doing what he's doing, but at the same time, he's going to have to do it if he wants to stay competitive and if he doesn't want to be on the hot seat at the end of the season. Nick, go ahead and rant about Dabo for a bit.
Don't get me wrong. I feel wholeheartedly that NIL, the portal, I've said it has turned into the Wild Wild West. It went from uber conservative to the Wild West in less than 5 years. Okay. So I'm totally with you on that. I wholeheartedly agree. I am also it's noted how often I say you cannot build a roster through the portal, right? But you have to be able to supplement your holes through the portal, okay? And you say that he shouldn't have to, okay? That man makes $10.8 million a year. If I'm paying you 10.8 mil a year, your ass better figure it out and do what it takes to win us games and win us national championships. He's taken himself and he's taken Clemson from a perennial powerhouse, a national championship contender, and it just keeps going down. And they're gonna get passed up. They're already getting passed up by teams in their own conference. I mean,
And the ACC is down this year, big
the
time.
ACC is not good, but
man,
I don't think it. And I have them winning the ACC, but again, the ACC is not good. If they played in the Big Ten this year or the SEC, they are sixth, seventh, eighth,
I was gonna say
ninth,
they're high middle
or dead middle.
or dead middle. Yeah, I agree. I'm just Man, it was week one, and we like to overreact on week one. Every single college football podcast is overreacting about stuff right now.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that they can turn it around because I do really have faith in Dabo as a coach, and I do like that purist attitude about the game of college football. But, man,
it's just not sustainable.
It's not sustainable.
It's not the game that we came to love. And as fans, I think we can sit back and really say these things and make these things clear. But we're also not getting paid $10 million to $11 million a year to win football games. So
agree.
You got to stop being a boomer.
Hot take.
Dabo is a boomer.
Hot take. He's going to keep his job this year, and he is going to pick up anybody and everybody in the portal just to prove a point. I'm calling it right now. Hot take.
I think that I do. I can't help but wonder if he would have been, had he just got with the times right away, would he be at Alabama right now? Would he have been offered the job?
Well, there was rumors. There was rumors that he was the guy that was. I mean, we said Lane
he
Kiffin
100%,
and Steve
he would have got it
Sarkisian,
over
but
Lane a million times
Agree.
over. And
Agree.
I think he probably would have got it over Sark as well.
I agree. But the thing about Dabo is Dabo's a good guy. I think they're going to give him one more season. If you remember last year at the end of the year, there was rumblings that he was on the hot seat at the end of last season. So I don't know, man.
Grass ain't always greener. But
the grass isn't always greener, but I will say, we have plenty of football left this season, so let's not overreact about Clemson. But I think your assessment is spot on. I think they played a horrible game. I think a lot of that has to do with Dabo not adapting to the times, and I think a lot of it has to do with Georgia being that good of a football team.
Georgia is that good.
But another great football team that played this week was the number 8 Penn State Nittany Lions at West Virginia University. The final score was 35-12. In my opinion, Drew Aller looked more confident than he did at the last half of last season. I think, the West Virginia game last year, stat line, he was much better, but I feel like he looked after rewatching the game, I think he looked much more comfortable with some of his throws. I think they let him air the ball out a little bit more than they did in the previous season. I think they played well. I think he played well. I think the rain delay killed what could have been a fun game. Not saying that this wasn't a fun game by any means, but I think Penn State came out a little bit more conservative in the second half, knowing that, I mean, their first drive in the second half, wasn't it a Nick Singleton touchdown, right? Rushing touchdown?
Yeah, but I mean, they converted on third down twice in that drive,
But
slinging it around.
I think they could have scored a lot more if it wasn't for that rain delay. I'm just going to be honest with you. I think we, you being a Penn State fan, me being a college football fan, we missed an opportunity for 50 points by Penn State. I'm just going to say it. I think that rain delay really stopped that.
Okay, so you're going that direction. I was gonna say I thought you were thinking that West Virginia would be more
No,
competitive.
no.
They
I think more points would have
didn't.
been scored by Penn State if that rain delay wasn't a thing. I think they had a hot hand going. I think they had a great
Oh
momentum
yeah, I
going
mean
into half.
they
And
had. I was nervous about going and again. So last week when we talked, I said this is one of those games where being a fan, I could, I've been hurt before, so I could see something stupid happening, right? But I said realistically, I'm probably gonna be sitting there in the third, fourth quarter, wiping the sweat off my brow, thinking, "What was I tripping over?" And that's exactly what we got. But I don't. West Virginia did not play the greatest football game. Penn State also didn't play up to, I think, the caliber they can play at. But man, that team is
I
they
think the
bolstered
second
that
half robbed
defensive
them of
line.
that. I think that second half robbed them of that. I really do. I believe that wholeheartedly. I believe that they were getting their groove. They were dusting off the cobwebs in the first half. I really think they robbed us from a 50-point game by Penn State. I truly believe that. You're talking about playing up to the caliber. Man, that rain delay was way too long. They were sitting in the locker room.
It's
I'm
two
sure
hours,
they were
over
trying to stay
right over two
warm.
hours.
They were trying to do all this stuff. I'm telling you, that team is going to come out this week just guns a blazing.
Well, here's the thing. As a fan who has watched every single Drew Aller football game, and I know it's real easy being, on the outside looking in when the only games you've seen of this kid have been Ohio State and Michigan last year. Mind you, he didn't play great, but these are also like number one and number two defenses in the country. One was a national champion, the other could have been in the playoff, you know. I mean, but I did see something different. This kid, I always thought like last year, I don't know, it's just the way he looks. He was green. He looks like a kid out there. I mean, he is a kid, but I mean, like he looks like, you know, he kind of looked like a
Almost,
deer in
almost,
headlights.
almost
Yeah,
imposter syndrome. Almost imposter syndrome.
he walked out there with swagger. Okay. I know he was a little passionate at first about that, and which we did watch it back. There was a clap, and so he was technically not wrong. But regardless, I was a little worried. I was like, fuck, he's showing too much emotion, but he came out with swagger, and I think that is a direct effect of Andy Kotelnicki.
I was going to say that Kolonicki, they ran that 2-point conversion that they didn't convert. And that is a play. I was actually talking with our head baseball coach. We were laughing about it out in the driveway of my house. That is a play that he ran in Kansas. And the trail guy is always open on that
Yes,
play. And
yes.
Drew hit the first receiver and didn't hit the trail guy. And that trail guy was wide open in the end zone. He was
Well,
literally.
it was Bo. It was Bo,
Oh, it was
actually.
Bo? I didn't realize it
Yeah.
was Bo.
Hmm.
Was wide open.
Well, here's the
And
thing, and I love it because you're stepping on their throat. You're
yeah,
making a statement right off the jump. And I the thing about it is even just from the little that I've watched from Kansas, last year and everything, he didn't show a lick of his playbook. And that is so promising to me. You had a mix of Bo Prabula being in there, running, throwing. Did you see the touchdown he threw to uh did you see the touchdown he threw? Who was it? It was
you're talking about Bo?
to yeah, it was Tyler Warren, the tight end. Yeah.
Which
It's
he's really
beautiful.
good at. He's really good as
You
well.
you keep, I mean, you have these backers that key, you have to honor him in the box because the kid can run the football. just an RPO right down the seam. And I it is early in the season, I know better than to get too jacked up, but from what I did see, I mean, there was explosivity. Drew was taking shots downfield, and you have guys that can play ball. And I told you that Trey Harrison, or Trey Wallace, I'm sorry,
Trey Wallace.
Harrison
Yep,
Wallace
Trey
is
Wallace. Yep.
Harrison Wallace is his name, but Trey Wallace, the kid has had so much promise, and he just was hurt all last year.
Yeah, and
And you know who didn't catch one pass? He didn't even get targeted? Julian.
huh? That's that young kid, right?
No, no, no. Tyser
No,
Denmark.
I'm okay. I'm thinking. Okay, Denmark. Okay.
Transfer.
Yep.
Transfer
Man, I don't know.
from Ohio State.
Penn State played well. Penn State played really well. I think the rain, like I said, I think the rain delay killed them. A tough week one game. I think this week going into Bowling Green, it's going to be a completely different game. I think that Aller's going to have another great week. Aller, like
Oh.
as I mentioned earlier, Aller's stats aren't what they were last year against West Virginia, but I feel like his confidence is
It was a more
poised.
complete, but it was a more complete team though because
He looked like a better. I think he looked better in situational football, and he looked better in the game. He looked better with confidence. He had that swagger, as you mentioned about him, that he didn't have last year going into West Virginia. Would you agree?
yeah, 100%.
And his stat line
And
wasn't
that's the thing.
as good,
So like
but
you see the outside looking in,
yeah,
where people are like, well, he had this kind of game against West Virginia last year. It's like, sure, he absolutely did, right? But having watched 13, 14, even 15, I've seen about 15 games when it's all said and done of Drew Aller between his freshman year when he get in a little bit and through now.
yeah,
The kid's carrying himself in a whole different manner. He like has his poise and his leadership
he's an
that
adult. He's acting like an
he's
adult now.
exuding, yeah, he's exuding confidence that he didn't the past 2 years. And I mean, I'm excited for it. I really am.
Agree, agree. It's going to be a fun season for Penn State. They have a tough, middle of the last half of the schedule, but I will say they have a pretty good team from what we've seen out of games this weekend. But we talk about quarterback play. We talk about our individual fandom. Chattanooga versus number 15 Tennessee. At the time, number 15 Tennessee. One of the things I want to mention, the score was 69-3. Nico is all that he's built up to be. And I know they played Chattanooga, and I know it's a hot take, but the way he played this weekend, the confidence he has as such a young starting quarterback, the passes that he was making, the kid is incredible. The kid will have a Heisman Final Four at some point during his college career, if not this year. He was 22 for 28, 314 yards, 3 touchdowns, and I think that was the stat line in the first half, right? They pulled him in the second half, if I'm
It
not mistaken.
was it was something stupid.
It was nuts, but the wide receiver room looked unstoppable. Dante Thornton had 3 catches, 105 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But Brew McCoy played really well. I believe he had 85 or 90-something yards. The one guy who did not make a lot of noise that I was very surprised with, that I want to keep an eye on this week, is Squirrel White. Squirrel White, there is potential for him to have a breakout game this week, but I will say he was very quiet. I think he had like 22 yards or something like that receiving. But, there's not enough rock to share when your other receivers are having, 100 and something yards and 90 something yards.
And they played 2 quarters of football.
And they played 2 quarters of football. But Squirrel White, like I said, he's going to be he's that shifty receiver that we have. He's speedy. He's got a lot of talent. He can catch the heck out of the ball. I think Squirrel White's going to have a big week this week. But with that in mind, he was very quiet this week, and I was very shocked on that. So, I loved everything about that Tennessee game. I loved everything about what we saw in the first half. I think Heupel, Heupel is getting ready for this Oklahoma game. I think the Oklahoma game is going to be a statement game for him because that's where he played at. That's his love. And I think that, Tennessee is a force to be reckoned with. Their offense especially is a force to be reckoned with in the SEC. But one other thing I want to note is James Pierce Jr. only played maybe 3 snaps this week, if that. He wasn't on the field much. He didn't play much. I think it might have been 10, actually. But he wasn't on the field much. He didn't play much. They're saving him. They're saving this beast, the number 1 player in college football right now. They are saving him. And when he is ready to be unleashed, that guy is so talented. He's so athletic. He's so explosive. He's so fast. He is going to be scary for offensive tackles in the SEC. I really truly believe that. Nick, any thoughts about the Tennessee win? I'm
I
drooling.
mean,
I'm drooling right now thinking about how well they look this week and how the future should be good for them and how there's very few extremely tough games on their schedule. Extremely tough games, very few.
you know, and I'm not saying they're the same player by any means. I think Nico is 110% in a better situation. I think the kid is a freak athlete. What I went through with the hype of Drew and seeing everybody talks him up so highly. Oh, he's this and he's that. End of the day, he was still a young guy, and there were some growing pains that you come across. So that being said, I am actually very intrigued by Tennessee's matchup next week. I think that is going to be a
I
true
agree.
test. I know NC State did not play a great football game last week, but NC State is a very well coached team. They have a solid defense. Their defensive staff across the board is very experienced, and I think this is going to be a true test for Nico. I really do. And it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I think the kid has all the tools to do it. I'm looking forward to seeing him under a little more pressure.
And you'll see that this week, and you're going to get to
Mhm.
see, if he has that fire to take them to the next level.
Oh yeah.
As much as I love Joe Milton, and as impressive of an arm that Joe Milton has, Joe Milton struggled at Michigan, if we're being honest. And Joe Milton transferred to Tennessee, and he took over for Hendon Hooker, which Hendon Hooker was a
Man, that kid
dog.
was special.
Hendon Hooker was truly special. He kept him in a lot of games and all that good stuff. But I really do believe that Nico is better than Hendon, and I think at the end of his career, he's going to end up being a better quarterback than Hendon. But, man, we're talking about quarterback play. We're talking about exciting quarterbacks. First and foremost, I want to say something. And I want to look you straight in the eyes, camera, and people watching. I was wrong. And there are points in people's lives where they're wrong. And they have to be a man, look you straight in the eyes, and say, hey, I was wrong. Cameron Ward. Boy, was I wrong. Nick, this guy, if he plays like this 3/4 of the season, and a lot of this could be a Florida thing, but if he plays like this 3/4 of the season with the swagger he had, the confidence that he had, the throws that he was making, I mean, the sidearm throws, the forearm, if he plays like this 3/4 of the season, he will win the Heisman. And I will say that right now. He showed flashes of this at Wazoo. Flashes. This kid played. This kid played incredible. His stat line, he was, 26 for 35, 385 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and he shook that interception off like it was no big thing. And that is what you want to see, especially in clutch time situations or big time situations. You make a mistake, you shake it off, you move on to the next play. Cameron Ward, I formally apologize to you. Us at the Saturday sermon, we apologize to you. At least, like I said, at least I do, 100%. You played incredible. You were lights out this weekend. And, kid, I'm very proud of you. You got a bright future ahead of you. Just don't get a big head. Nick, that final score of that game, Miami versus Florida, was 41-17. Florida looked like absolute dog crap. The coaching at Florida, I mean,
That's because they are dog crap.
they are dog crap. They really are. And I just think Miami played so aggressive, and they just had that unmatched swagger about them. They had glimpses of that U swagger that they used
See,
to talk
you
about.
beat me to it. I was just going to say that
Glimpses. They
Cam
didn't
and
show it the whole game, but the team had glimpses of that U swagger that they used to talk about.
well,
Nick, what's your
and
thoughts on that game?
they have the right guy to do it. You said it before I could. Cam Ward exuded confidence, and that had the U written all over it. I think that's what the people want. I think they see that and they get hope of a past that they once had. That I think Miami fans are riding high right now. Um, they're going to roll through the ACC. So it's like, when are you gonna really be able to see just how good this program is? I want to formally apologize to myself for sitting here and saying that I think Florida's going to play a decent game this week. because
I think
they
they were going to. I believe I said they were going to keep it close, and I believe I picked Florida to win the game, which
I
I'm
did
upset
too.
about it. I'm upset about it.
They looked horrendous. Billy Napier couldn't even open a water bottle in the press conference.
That was
He is
the
taking
that was the most
L's.
that was more embarrassing. I think that water bottle situation was more embarrassing than the loss.
I don't understand how you don't open the freaking water bottles. It's not even like a Gatorade bottle, and that's easy to open.
It
But it's harder
reminded
to
me. It
open than a
reminded me of
water bottle.
that baseball game. I don't know if you've seen it on ESPN or ever saw it on ESPN, but they always showed that the not top 10. And there was that big jack guy in the crowd of a baseball game, and he couldn't get the water bottle open, and he handed it to his wife, and his wife cleaned the top water off and opened the bottle straight up. That's what it reminded me of. That was embarrassing, and the fact that it was on national TV during a press conference that this man couldn't open a water bottle, that was the least of his worries. Nick, the most of his worries right now, the highest point of his worries, the GoFundMe page going around right now.
And here's the thing, dude.
Because they're still paying
I
Dan
feel
Mullen.
like
They're still paying Dan Mullins, right?
I
I
believe
believe
so.
they're still paying Dan Mullins. What they should have never fired. Them
No,
firing.
okay, and so
them, them
that was
firing.
the
Them
point that I
firing.
wanted to bring up.
So them
That was the
firing Dan Mullins
stupidest
is
fire that they could have ever made.
agree.
And how many times do I tell you? How many times do I tell you? It's every time people start talking about James Franklin needing to lose his job or
Yep.
Ryan Day need to lose his job.
The grass
What
isn't always
happens?
greener. Yep. They
What
always
happens?
decline. They always
Tell
hire
me,
the
tell
big
me
name
where
hire of
you're
the
gonna
year.
find. Tell me where you're gonna you. But even Billy Napier, he was from the freaking Sun Belt.
Well, there
No
is a really good
disrespect.
there is a really good coach out there that I'm sure would love to get back in the SEC, and he's on College Game Day on Saturdays. That is my perfect scenario. There's two guys that are on my perfect scenario for Florida. One of them coached there previously. The other one is an Alabama legend. I think Saban and
Oh my
Urban.
God, could you
If
imagine?
you're gonna fire Billy Napier with this high buyout, if you're gonna fire him, especially after firing Dan Mullins, you either have to hire a massive coach like a Nick Saban or like a Urban Meyer, or you're going to have to go to somebody in house and just know you're going to suck for the next couple of years to keep players happy. I think the Napier Mullen situation is a lot like us being Cardinals fan, the Mike Schilt, Ole Marmol situation. You had a coach
Sure.
that was great. You had a coach that was good. You had a coach that took you to the playoffs. Florida didn't go to the playoffs. They went to the SEC
I
title
mean,
game, and they barely lost the SEC title game to the national champions. But you fired a guy that rightfully should have been there, should have kept his job because you wanted to take the next step and you wanted to be that team of four in the playoff
he
competition.
was a Florida guy through and through.
And
He was
you
there
you
back in the
hired you
Tebow
hire
days. He
you
was there
hire
when they
the
won the national
yep.
title.
But
That one makes me
you
sick.
hire the next pretty toy available for you, and it screws you over. You hire your guy, and he screws you over, and that's exactly what's going on with the Cardinals right now. Schilt's thriving with the Padres, and then you have Ole Marmol, who's probably going to get fired after this season. So that's my take on that game. I will say
I feel like
I want to donate to the GoFundMe, Nick. I really do. I want to donate my whole entire savings for the house we're trying to buy to that GoFundMe page. But
look, Billy Napier seems like such a nice guy. Doesn't he? He seems like the guy that is laid back. He's your neighbor. He'll drink a beer, maybe go fishing with you. Just
throw some bags with you during college football game day
Yeah.
where he belongs.
So it pains me. It pains me to like do this to the guy. But Florida deserved this. Point blank period. A million times. How many times have I said it about this very situation that the grass is not always greener?
You do. You do. Talking about grass being greener. Talking about things that always aren't what they seem. 41 for 49, 380 yards by a quarterback. You hear that stat line, you're thinking, week one, it's probably a blowout, right? Probably an incredible game.
Against an FCS opponent as a tune-up that
Against
they
an
paid
FC, yep.
500
You think that,
G's.
you think that's maybe a half, 3/4 of stats,
Yeah.
and then you realize it is Oregon, who was ranked number 3 at the time, versus Idaho, in a 24-14 win. You talk about not being able to capitalize off of situations. Dylan Gabriel played his tail off. I mean, 41 for 49, 380 yards, 2 touchdown performance. That should be a massive lead. I mean, that has massive lead all over it. You talk about this same stat line in a blowout, and everyone's talking about Dylan Gabriel as the front runner for the Heisman. People are talking about him in front of Cam Ward right now. But the final score of that game was 24-14. Nick, I just think it was a horrible performance at executing when it meant the most for Oregon. I think they took a nap. I think they didn't. They couldn't wake up for Idaho. Um, I do have my thoughts
They didn't
about
think
them.
they were going to need to.
I don't. Yes, exactly. I didn't think thought it was going to be a gritty game, as gritty of a game as what it was. But when I was watching this game, we had a fire pit going. We were enjoying it. We were enjoying our night, and watching this game, that was kind of embarrassing. If you're an Oregon fan, I'm not too worried about this game, but you got to look at what happened. I mean, Idaho is not good. Boise State is a much better team than Idaho is, and if they come and they can't capitalize off of key situations against Boise State, who had a horrible defensive performance this week against, I believe, Georgia Southern, if they play that
Oh, it's
same game,
horrendous.
if they play that same game against Boise State, I think Oregon might have their hands full this weekend. But Nick, what are your thoughts about the Idaho-Oregon game?
I think this is a wake up call. I do. I mean, there were some injuries for Oregon, but I'm sorry. You have to have like 15 injuries of all starters, not probably more than that until I'm like, oh, I'm a little worried. Like, this is a legitimate excuse. You were the Oregon Ducks. You were ranked third in the country. You were viewed as a national title caliber football program, and you were playing an FCS opponent. No excuse of a couple injuries here or there are legitimate for me. I'm sorry. And
Idaho moved to FCS this year, right? Or was it last year?
no, this was like 2016
Oh,
or 2018. It's been some years
why did I
because
think? Why did I think they just moved down? I don't know why I
no,
think
they
thought they just
they
moved down.
they they were 9-4 last year. They are on the up and up for FCS football, but I mean, they're not even the best FCS opponent, and you're supposed to be a national title team. I This may be an old head statement of somebody who played back in the day of gritty football, whatever you want to say. These dudes were dancing on the sideline the start of the fourth quarter up 14-7 against an FCS opponent. I've coached some football teams before that did things like that. I have also seen teams, i.e., the Ohio State Buckeyes, that used to do the little TikTok dances before games, get mollywopped by Michigan. I don't like any of that stuff, man. It rubs me the wrong way, and you got to be locked in a situation like that. You can't be. To me, I think it says something about the culture, and it doesn't sit with me well. You know,
Does it say something about Dan Lanning?
he's a weirdo. He's
He's a
just
strange guy. That school out
he's.
west.
Have you ever seen his tattoo
I
of his
have
of his
of his
wife
wife, right? Yep.
with I think what is an
This
old a logo on her face, like a face tat. He has a tat of his wife with a face tat
I couldn't
of a
remember if it was a
football logo.
teardrop or a logo or something, but
No,
yes, it's
it's a freaking logo.
he's a weird dude, man. He's a weird
Anyways,
dude. Great coach, but he's a
he's
weird dude. But do you think it
I
has
just
anything to do with his demeanor and how he is as a person? Is kind of rubbing off on the team, and I mean, do you think maybe it has something to do with him finally being in power for X amount of years and the team starting to become him? Do you think
I mean,
the team's getting weird and quirky and thinking they're better than what they really
it's
are? Kind of like how Dan Lanning
well,
thought
okay.
Oregon was better than what they were last year.
They think that they are in the national title right now. In my opinion, this is the vibe I'm getting from them. Again, you can call me like an old head on this, but Nick Saban who's won several national titles, would have never. Okay. I don't like it, just it doesn't give me a good culture vibe there, and I think that would scare me a little bit.
Not to segue, but speaking of Nick Saban and culture vibe, did you watch the Instagram reel or whatever it was of Pat with his shirt off dancing
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Saban just looking at him like, what have I gotten myself into?
Yeah.
I don't mean to jump off track of games of the week and stuff, but I do want to mention Saban on, you know, the pregame show. I think he is phenomenal. I think
Oh,
the
it's
X's and
perfect,
O's,
dude.
it's a perfect fit. And I think Pat is the perfect amount of crazy to match his knowledge. And I think those two together is going to be fun. I think you're going to get a lot of really good content out of them this year.
Saban
Just
says some funny shit too,
yeah,
though.
Saban
What do you
is, but
say? If you don't
his
pay the
is
right guys, you're shit out of luck.
but he's very dry with some of his comments. But
Oh
no,
yeah.
but going back to what you're saying, Saban would be not rolling over in his grave, but Saban would be rolling his eyes at kind of the stuff going on in Oregon, especially if he was the head coach. Imagine if that went on in Alabama. Speaking of that, in Alabama, did you see how much
Post
swagger
it
they
up.
had? They had posted up, taking photos, had the title belt on them and everything. God, everything about Alabama is
It's
just
different.
been
It's
it's just
different
been
in
thrown
Tuscaloosa.
out the window. I said window, like I'm from Alabama. Thrown out the window. Tuscaloosa is a different place now under Kalen DeBoer, and it's kind of fun.
It's when Nick Saban was there, you you got tired of them winning, but and he could if he was still there winning games, I probably would be like, I want to see something different. But it never had anything to do with Nick Saban because he is the GOAT. 110% the GOAT. I think his style was hilarious. I think it was the same as, that whole Bill Belichick thing where it's like football's not fun. Like we don't care about fun, we care about winning. And it's a great formula. So I'm always gonna miss that hard-nosed Nick Saban. I'm coaching your ass hard, even though we're up by 52 points, because that's how I roll, because I want perfection. I'm gonna miss that. But I think DeBoer's he's definitely different. I don't think they're gonna miss a beat though. Jalen Rowe looked phenomenal, and I think he's only gonna be better throughout the season, and that's why I picked him to be my Heisman.
Well, speaking of teams, Nick, that are going to be better throughout the season, one of the games you and I had a great long text conversation about in our group chat, college football this season. Fresno at number 9, Michigan. At the time, number 9, Michigan. Talking about teams that underperformed this week, they are they're my team that really crapped the bed this week. Michigan did not look good. The quarterback controversy or whatever's going on between Warren and Orgy or whatever his name is. I believe it's Orgy, right?
Yeah, Alex Orji and Davis
Alex
Warren.
Orgy. Yeah, I can't remember if it's Orgy or OG. Either or. That quarterback controversy is horrible. Orgy's still doing situational football like he did last season. That's not your answer. I think the two quarterback system works sometimes, but I don't think it's your go-to. I don't think it's your thing, especially with a team like them who have so many dynamic backs that could really get the run game going. Why are you relying on a mobile quarterback to get the run game going? My question in all this, the 30-10 win, where was Donovan Edwards? Where was he at? I mean, he had 11 carries for
That was
27
my
yards.
biggest
Where was he at? Their backup running back outperformed him by far. I think he had 96 or 97 yards. Like, why is your
92 I have
92?
pulled up.
You have your college football, EA Sports college football front and center player who's on the cover coming out week 1 and kind of crapping the bed. But I will say this one thing about Michigan before I stop talking. This is a lot like last year, Bowling Green, in a different way. Bowling Green last year, J.J. McCarthy threw 3 picks? Struggled.
Yeah.
They did not look good against Bowling Green last year. People started to question them then. It's the same, but it's different that the running back, the main guy, your stud, Donovan Edwards, did not look like what he should look like. Their offensive line is young. Their offensive line has a lot of new pieces. They don't have the same award winners on their offensive line. At the same time, you got to get something going. You got to pick up that momentum. This is a cakewalk of a game, which Fresno is not a horrible team, but this is a game that your defending national champions should come in and just steamroll through. I think, in my opinion, this week's going to be a different story, but we'll get to that when we start to talk about breakdowns of the game. But my big thing in this whole thing is that they did not look like defending national champions. And Donovan Edwards, if you want to have a successful season this year, you have to step up and you have to play ball like you know you can play ball. That's my takeaway of this game.
I'm actually going to give him a little bit of grace, which may shock you here. I am not cutting any slack for the Oregons, these programs that have all the pieces. Michigan lost so much. And to be honest with you, I'm not really shocked by the outcome here. I'm shocked that Donovan Edwards was non-existent. That blows my mind. I for sure thought he was going to be the one guy they can lean on. I think that Michigan is going to be down this year. You know, that being said, I think they kind of remind me right now of where Bama was last year before they benched Jalen Milroe, before they did these, they had their transition. They kind of didn't seem like,
They're flip flops of QBs.
yeah, they kind of didn't really have uh, much of an identity. I'm not an expert here by any means, but what I feel that Michigan needs to do is do exactly what Bama did and say, we're playing murder ball. Our defense is going to be nasty. We are going to try our damnedest to be aggressive and physical and just go back to their roots. I think Alex Orji's the guy they probably need to do it with. Um, I'm not totally like selling my stock yet on Michigan. I do think they're down. I don't think they're a national contender this year. I do think they can still be in the discussion when it comes throughout the season, when it comes time for the Big Ten championship. I mean, look what Oregon looks like. That was supposed to be your number one. I didn't really think Ohio State looked as good as they should have. It was 17-3 at half, and they were playing a third string quarterback at a MAC school. I'm not I'm not going to overreact on this one.
My question for you, Orgy, all right? Does he give you vibes of a Denard Robinson type quarterback? Minus the number, minus the outlandish number that, Denard wore. But does he kind of give
Well,
you Denard vibes? Except for I feel like Orgy might have a little bit more mobility, and I think he might have a little bit better of an arm.
he gives me
Those
JJ McCarthy vibes, but
those Denard teams
not as
weren't
good.
very good, though. I will say this: those Denard teams weren't very good. But I think the mobility and I think what they could use him for, his strengths, I think he could play the same style of football that, especially with the running backs they have, that Denard played, and they could find a lot of success.
I don't think you're wrong. I think that what happens this season will be a testament to that coaching staff and just how good they are. You know, um, it's going to be interesting for sure to see. Um, I think the 2 years, like are the two games that Jim Harbaugh was out last year, gave Michigan this grand idea of what this current staff is and can be. But I th- I'm interested to see the season play out just to kind of see exactly what comes of this. I mean, it could say a lot about them. Um, I think they can gain a lot more respect at the end of the season than they can lose, in my opinion. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm not selling my stock just yet.
Agree, agree. Next team we'll talk about, next game we'll talk about, kind of moving forward. We'll talk about the Sunday night big game that was on. That game was Notre Dame, who was ranked number 7 at the time, versus number 20 Texas A&M. I personally picked Texas A&M. Was Mike Elko the guy? The final score was 23-13. It was a fun game outside of the
It was
fact
not a fun
that
game to me.
it was a fun
That wasn't.
game. It was a fun game outside of the fact that Connor Weigman, he played like a backup quarterback of an FCS school. I mean, he was 12 for 30, 100 yards, 2 interceptions. You look at stat lines and you're like, man, Riley Leonard didn't play anything insane or anything crazy or anything like that. Didn't play an incredible game, but Riley Leonard did what they needed to do to win. I think that Notre Dame's their DBs, they just wouldn't let A&M breathe. I mean, honestly, was Elko the right decision or was he just a hot hire at the time? That's my question. I think Notre Dame's schedule the rest of the season moving forward is pretty favorable for them. There's a great chance Notre Dame could win out. I'm not saying they will, could win out, but thinking about it a little bit more, Notre Dame could be a playoff team just by the basis of this first win of the season. But my
And they're
question
going to
for
get blown out
I
if
agree.
they get it.
I agree. But my question for you, starting into this, I'll ask for your thoughts after. But my question was: Mike Elko the right hire for A&M, or was Mike Elko just the hot hire that they needed somebody to replace a hot guy who was no longer the hot guy?
It's way too early to tell. To honestly, I mean, I'm not putting much stock into this. I thought you would get a lot better performance out of Connor Wigman. You didn't get that. This is his Mike Elko's first game as the head coach there. I don't think Notre Dame's world beaters like everybody thinks. I definitely don't think they deserve their number 5 ranking this week. But that's par for course with how the media treats and the AP poll treat Notre Dame. I think they played Notre Dame football. They played football that reminded me of Notre Dame football from last year, where their quarterback did just enough to get them by. I just think that I'm not sure. It's too early to tell on Elko.
Yeah, again, we overreact after week one. Speaking of overreacting, I'm overreacting right now to this Baltimore Kansas City game. Xavier Worthy with another touchdown today. Wow, that kid looks incredible. That's another Texas guy that is finding a lot of success already in the league at such a young age, and it's only week one. 2 touchdowns tonight. That's pretty impressive. Did not mean to segue into that. But again, we overreact in week one in every sport. We overreact, the first half of the baseball season before the All-Star break. Man, I don't know. Does Elko put Texas A&M in a better position to win more games than Jimbo did? That is kind of where I'm running back and forth with. I don't know, man. There's too much money in Texas at Texas A&M. There's too much opportunities at Texas A&M.
Well, see, and that's the thing. Maybe,
They shouldn't be
maybe
bad.
we see if you talk about University of Texas having issues with boosters. Jimbo Fisher was a national championship head coach. What in the world happened when he went to Texas A&M? What was the culture shift? What goes on behind the scenes? Because they churn out blue chip stars every single draft class or recruiting class. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, and another I don't know is Brian Kelly. Um, you talk about that move. Notre Dame.
We
I mean,
did it
Brian Kelly should have never left Notre
again.
Dame.
We did it again.
I mean, I've slammed things
Joke.
down out of frustration. I've never slammed a water bottle on the table and blamed my players as bad. I've never
Dude,
blamed
that was bad.
anyone.
That
He,
was
he
bad.
he took he took and passed accountability on that loss to everybody but the man who's in charge and the man that's controlling the X's and O's. The game we're speaking on is the Sunday night game, which actually was an awesome game to watch. A great way to spend your Sunday night. The number 23 ranked at the time USC, at number 13 ranked at the time LSU. Man, the final score was 27-20. I think both defenses did not play that bad. I think that USC did a really good job with some of the pieces that they picked up from the transfer portal, and making their defense look much better than they did last year. If this was the LSU team from last year and the USC team from last year, you bet the over. You don't even question it, because this game would have been such high scoring of a game. I think that Miller Moss came out ready to play. I think Miller Moss looked great. But I also think Nussmeier looked really good as well. I mean, you talk about his
He threw for
he
right
was
under 400 yards.
yeah.
I mean, he
Well,
was
no,
in deep
yeah.
in the threes, wasn't he?
Miller Moss was 27 for 36, 378 yards, one touchdown. Nussmeier was 29 for 38, 304 yards, two touchdowns, and he had that one
304. Okay, yeah.
304. But he had that one garbage time interception that I mean, I told Melissa, my wife, um, we're watching the game. I said, babe, this is called prevent defense. This is when you say, I don't care about what your quarterback does. We're going to have 17 people on the field 15, 20 yards deep to be able to pick this ball off or to be able to stop a deep ball from happening. And that's exactly what happened. That interception, I wish garbage time plays didn't count on the stat line. I wish garbage time touchdowns don't count. I wish garbage times interceptions don't count. That was a garbage interception that you knew it was going to happen. I mean, just the coverage in general, you knew it was going to happen. But I think both quarterbacks looked really well. I said this is a game last week that is going to prove if these two quarterbacks are studs or duds. These two quarterbacks prove that they could be studs this year moving forward. But man, Brian Kelly, you got to take accountability. Your team lost that game because of nobody else but you. One person, and that is you. Nick, what are your thoughts about the game in general?
I think he's lost his team. This isn't about the game. I'll get to that, but you know what? I'll start with that. Let's go the game first because I could go deep on
Before you
Mr.
dive into
Kelly.
that, before you dive into that, do you know when he lost his team?
I think he lost his team when he was doing the
I was getting ready to do it. Hold on.
yeah. The second I saw that, I was like, this man is going to get cooked in the SEC.
Yes, that was so
He is going
embarrassing.
to get
That
eaten
is
alive in this
that is some
conference.
pardon my language, and I try to minimize the cussing as much as possible in this pod, but that is the shit you see at a wedding with a drunk 55-year-old man and his 17-year-old daughter. That is what that was. That was embarrassing. He lost respect from a lot of people who really was looking forward to him taking that LSU job. Nick, that was embarrassing, and that is when I knew that Brian Kelly was not the guy to take LSU to that next level. And he's
That I
shown
wholeheartedly
exactly
agree.
that.
Wholeheartedly agree. I That is a soft football team. That is a soft ass football team. That is nothing from the true fabric of LSU is on display in the Brian Kelly era. When I first started watching college football, they were tough. In our peak days in high school, they were DBU. They had these studs on the defense that you couldn't complete. They would take the ball from your hands. They were nasty. This secondary lays down. This team is soft. And that's what killed me about that presser. I think he lost his team officially after this week. There's certain guys that can say certain things and hold their team accountable in the media. Some of the great ones, talking about their fat little girlfriends. He is one of the Saturday sermon deities or gods or whatever you want to call it. Mike Leach. But the fact, and I saved the quote here. I saved the quote. Brian Kelly. It's the first time since I've been here at LSU that I'm angry at my football team. He points to the personal fouls that helps USC score and not having a killer instinct to put USC away. Corrects me if I'm wrong. He didn't talk about the play calling. He didn't talk about the forms or the formations or the schemes, the coverage. He talked about the things as the head coach that you have the direct control over, the culture of your football team. And you're going to sit here and point the blame at the players? When you're the guy in charge, you call the shots, you establish the culture. Not only that, his little pout, he was pouting. He was pouting.
My one and almost 2-year-old, I think he throws less temper tantrums than Brian Kelly does.
And
That was embarrassing.
but even like
If I'm a
and
player, I'm going into that meeting on Monday morning, and I'm just I'm not listening to anything he says. I'm not giving him acknowledgement. I'm not doing any of that stuff. I'm not. I mean, he has
I mean,
lost. You're
you
right.
lost them,
He lost him. He lost him.
and
And you
they're
blame
going to struggle
every
this year.
single person in the
They're going
world.
to struggle this year.
You blame every single person in the world besides the guys with the hats and the headsets on the sidelines, and that is ridiculous.
And I hate to say it, but you've been in a locker room, a football locker room, and on the field with the guys. His players are mocking him right now. They're
They're in the weight room
they're
Monday.
they're
They're
at
in the
the
weight room
they
Monday
they're
morning.
punching the little and they're doing his voice, his soft little sounding voice. They are eating this man alive. Welcome to football.
And you want to talk
But
about losing a room. We're going to move forward. We're going to talk about losing a room. Florida State, Boston College, Bill O'Brien's debut as the Boston College head coach.
I salute you, Billy.
28-13 Boston. My question about this whole game. Yes, Florida State is bad. Yes, this is karma from them, pardon my language, bitching and moaning and whining and complaining and blaming everybody but the situation on why they weren't in the playoffs last year. This is DJU not being the quarterback they thought he was going to be. They let him air it out this week, and it did nothing. This has nothing to do with how bad the running backs were this week, how dreadful the running backs is. This has nothing to do with how bad Norvell's apology was after the game, apologizing to all the Florida State fans and all the people who are fans of Florida. My biggest takeaway from this game, and Nick, I don't care about what the final score was. Boston College won this game. My question is, how long is Bill O'Brien going to be at Boston College before he moves on to a major program? Bill O'Brien is a guy that should have always been a head coach at a major program. Bill O'Brien is a guy that, during the dark era, did great things at Penn State. Bill O'Brien's a guy that was the fall guy, not the fall guy in the sense of he got all the blame put on him. The fall guy on all the punishment that happened during the Penn State scandal fell on his reign, and he still went out and still
And
coached his
went
tail
8 and
off,
4.
and he still won games during this with the circumstances. Bill O'Brien's the guy that went to the Houston Texans, didn't coach that well for the Houston Texans. He coached under Bill Belichick for several years. Bill O'Brien is a guy. I believe he coached for Saban for a little bit too. I believe he coached with Saban maybe 2 years ago or 3 years or something like that. But anyways, Bill O'Brien is a guy that should always have a head coaching position available for him in the FBS. Bill O'Brien is a guy that I can see moving to a conference like the Big 12 next year, truthfully, and having a
I'd
head
love to see
coaching
him out
position
there.
somewhere there. I think the perfect landing spot for Bill O'Brien, that's a better situation, a better opportunity, would be a team like Houston or a team like Texas Tech that plays in the Big 12, that isn't in the ACC, because I feel like the ACC is going to start folding here soon. I think that Bill O'Brien's going to make a move in the near future. I think maybe next year or maybe the year after. But what is your timeline on Bill O'Brien's reign at Boston College?
It's so strange, man, because he is quite like he's been deep in his career at this point. Like what does he want to do? Does he have those admirations, or does he say, you know what, BC is solid. This is a nice gig. I enjoy it. I'm gonna write it out. You never know. I will say I am so happy that he didn't go to Ohio State. I mean, one, because I think he's a great coach, but two, because that would just disgust me. I have a lot of love and respect and admiration for Bill O'Brien and what he was able to do. And not only from like the X's and O's and winning football games, but the culture that he was able to create. Like he took the Hackenbergs, the Adam Brennemans, these kids that it wasn't popular to play for that university. And he took them aside, took their parents, and he was just able to establish this culture against
And
all odds. And
he also established that culture in a year that it didn't matter how good of a team they were.
they
They
had
had a bowl
recruiting
ban.
violations.
They
They
had a
had a
bowl
bowl
ban, right?
ban, and they
Yeah.
went and they lost. You know, that was before the portal, but they were all able to transfer. They lost so much, and he went 8-4 in the Big Ten under all those circumstances. that man deserves to go coach somewhere. If guys like Billy Napier can be coaching in the SEC, I think Bill O'Brien probably deserves a job somewhere else than BC.
Bill O'Brien at Florida.
Oh man, probably
Back in
wouldn't
the
cost him
SEC,
nearly as
in
much
the
as
SEC, yeah, it wouldn't cost him as much as a big name coach, and he is a big name coach. I think he's a guy that falls under the radar quite a bit. I think a lot of people not realizing coming into this game how good of a head coach Boston College had.
Dan Mullen, or not Dan Mullen. I'm sorry,
Billy Napier.
Florida with what they've done with Dan Mullins, they're not going to have the foresight, I think, to make that role. But
But
either way,
what's your actual takeaways from the game? I know I got on a rant about Bill O'Brien and how I think his timeline
yeah, yeah,
at
yeah.
Boston College is very short. But as I mentioned, like I said, Florida State they're bad.
No, I mean
This is
it's
karma.
they're just not good. They're not a good football team. They don't have a good quarterback. This is the
Well,
resemblance.
how do you go from running the ball so much against Georgia Tech to just airing it out and just trying to throw the ball into some? Is that Norvell listening to Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and the media and all that stuff? Is that him saying, "Hey, I want to prove to you that DJU was a good investment"?
I mean they were playing behind as well. What is it? It was 14-0, so I don't think they had much of a choice. Um, but they could just never catch up. This is very this resembles to me like the Penn State COVID year where it was just like what in the world's going on here? Like they started playing and they just lost out every freaking game they played. It was just like a mixture. Like they lost their first 4 or 5 games. It was a strange dynamic, and that's what it reminds me of. I think gonna get it's not gonna be very friendly the rest of the season to them. And I think pressure's on Norvell and DJU. I do feel for the kid, but it's a good day to not be in Tallahassee.
Agree. And you talk about pressure, and you talk about rising up to that pressure, and you talk about showing up when they need you the most. Nick, the most important players this week are players of the week. Who do you have as your players of the week, and why are they your players of the week?
I got 3 quarterbacks here. I first and foremost, you got to give it to Cam. Cam Ward, the kid played well. Whether Florida was unprepared
Cam
and they're going to be horrendous,
is here.
the kid played hard. He looked good. He had that swag. He had that U swagger. They're they're not going to play a tough schedule this year. I mean, they're gonna go on a run. They're probably going to get in. You know, it's going to be fun to see how it plays out. Next player, I got Miller Moss. This kid has patiently waited behind uh, as a second string quarterback um, to be the quarterback at USC. He waited his time, he paid his dues, and he goes out there and he leads his team down the field for a game-winning drive. And he was so poised while he did it. This looked like they're running plays on air. I think LSU's defense was really soft, playing soft coverage, and that's besides the point. I think Miller Moss played a great football game. I do have one other guy, call me biased, but I'm gonna give it to Drew Aller. This is no specific order. If there was an order, it probably putting Drew last, Drew third here, but the kid had confidence and he made NFL caliber throws on Saturday. So some of those throws, I don't think any other quarterback in the Big Ten could have made. That's including Dylan Great Gabriel. The stock is so high on Drew in the eyes of NFL scouts and these NFL guys for reasons like Saturday. That back shoulder throw to the end zone before half. The kid has mad potential, and I'm so happy we're able to see it. And I'm excited to see where it goes.
Well, I'm happy you're happy. Very happy you're happy. Well, My players of the week. I am not a Heisman voter, so I didn't vote all quarterbacks. That's no shot at
That's
you,
fair.
but
That's fair.
I feel like a lot of times we put too much pressure on, or too much stock on quarterbacks, and not enough around the people about the people around them. Because if that was the case, I would pick Noah Fafita as a player of the week, and I didn't. I picked number
There's
one.
another Arizona player that
I picked McMillan as my, no specific order, but McMillan, man, 304 yards, 4 receiving touchdowns.
that is
He single-handedly kept Arizona in that game against a team they should have never. I mean, the first half, excuse me. He kept them in that first half of that game against a team that they should have never had a tight first half against. The second half was a different story, but I think that McMillan he's. I mean, I told you, when we did our unreleased Big 12 preview, that's a guy that's going to be a perennial wide receiver in the NFL, and he is showing that right now. He's a big-bodied receiver. He's athletic. He can catch he can catch high passes. He can catch the deep ball. He can run. He can move. That kid is incredible. He was very impressive. My second pick for Player of the Week is someone that I have been talking to you about for the past 2 seasons. He is somebody that I've followed his career from the beginning. He's somebody that had an incredible year splitting reps last year. I think he had 1,300 yards rushing as a quote-unquote second-string running back for a lot of the season. Ashton Gennetti from Boise State. You want to talk about defenses playing like hot garbage. Their defense played like hot garbage against
that
Georgia
was
Southern.
horrendous.
Miserable. They ended up winning 56-45, and all of that, not some of that, not part of that, all of that had to do with Ashton Gennetti. 20 carries, 260 rushing yards, and here's the kicker: 6 touchdowns. The kid is special. I've said the kid is special since the first time I've ever seen him play. The kid is phenomenal. He ended up beating George Hawani out for the position last year, the running back position last year after some injuries and stuff like that. This kid is a first-round NFL talent. They are projecting this kid to go into the top 15 of the draft. For a running back, that's incredible. Ashton Gennetti, he is a guy that could be a dark horse at the end of the season. And I think once we get into it a little bit more, that this week against Oregon is going to prove how good of a running back this kid is. And I'm telling you, he's not going to disappoint. But that's my 2 players of the week. I didn't pick 3. I didn't feel like picking 3. I've already apologized and gave their quarterbacks their flowers. So this was more for me to address the other guys that I thought performed really well. But gosh, both of these 2 men played incredible football this weekend. But
I agree with you. I took the easy route here, but I mean, when you're a receiver, I don't care what I don't care if you're playing an FCS team, an FBS team, who you're playing. You have to rely on a line to block, a quarterback to throw you the football, and defenses to line up, and defenses to go a certain way to get the ball in your hands in the first place. But it doesn't matter. None of it matters to this kid. You throw the ball up, he's going to come down with it. And if you put 300 over 300 yards receiving up against any opponent, you're a dog.
I agree. And you want
And
to
then
talk
six
about.
touchdowns. 6 touchdowns. I mean, Boise State may have lost that football game that they shouldn't have lost
Well, they
if it
won.
wasn't. No,
Yeah,
no, I'm
so
saying
they should have
I'm
lost the
saying
game if it wasn't for those 6 touchdowns. Yeah, I agree.
if it wasn't for one man putting a team on his back,
I agree. I
I
agree.
can get behind those.
So we talk about one man, we talk about one army, we talk about one unit. We're going to move into some unit games this week. We're going to move into some team games this week. We're going to move into week 2. Week 1 is behind us, so we'll go ahead and throw that away. We'll talk about more of it at the end of the season when we do our recap. But we're going to do our week 2 preview. And the first game we're going to talk about is the number 3 ranked Texas Longhorns at the number 10 ranked Michigan Wolverines. Texas is currently a 7.5-point favorite. And a lot of people think that Texas is going to go in this game because the line moved. I believe it was 3.5 last week, and now it's 7.5 this week.
Yeah.
I think the line moved because of how bad Michigan played against Fresno State. Nick, what are your thoughts about this game? How are you feeling about this game? What are some hot points about this game that you're thinking about?
I think Texas wins, and I think they cover. I don't think it's going to be as easy as people think. I could see Michigan going in and getting back to the roots and playing smash mouth hard style defense. Um, I'd say if you're going to bet on this game and you're going to bet Texas by the points, you better lock it in now because if that thing moves, I'd be a little concerned. I think there's a world where it can get a little dicey, the quarterback situation with Texas. And I only say that because they got to get a run game going. If they cannot get a run game going against Michigan, and this game is solely in the hands of Quinn, I think Quinn gets the job done. Don't get me wrong. But if Quinn doesn't get the job done up to Texas standards, what are you going to hear? You've been saying it a lot. It could be a little dicey.
I
Um,
think I think last week was the worst thing that happened to Texas football in relation to Quinn Ewers. The Arch Madness, it's already started. It's already started. And it's rolling. And you talk about, you talk about the worst thing that can happen to Texas. And I've talked about it in the past, as you mentioned. The worst thing that can happen to Texas, and I'm looking at you in the camera again. Serious moment from old Joe here. Shut up about Arch Manning. You are talking about a kid who came in the second half of a game that they were winning big at that point anyways, and played well against Colorado State, who are no slouches, but they're not a big team that you're going to play. You're talking so highly about a kid who has played a half of football, and you're totally forgetting the fact that your starting quarterback, threw 3 touchdowns in the first half. You're forgetting about that. He threw that on their starting defense. Shut up with Arch Madness. Stop making this happen, because I said at the beginning when we did our previews that this is going to be the downfall of Texas's season, and it's happening faster than I imagined. Quinn comes out and he doesn't play a great game this week. Quinn comes out and goes 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, play a tight game, or lose against Michigan. They're going to be so quick to snap their fingers and change quarterbacks. Shut up about Arch Madness. ESPN,
it
SportsCenter,
is
everybody. I don't want to see another Arch Manning meme. I don't want to hear you talk about Arch Manning if you do not talk about Quinn Ewers and give this man the respect that he deserves. He is a
it
guy that
blows
will
my
be
mind.
he's a guy that will be in New York or have the potential to be in New York, and you're so ready to pass him up because of the Manning last name. Hey, from me, Texas fans, shut up. Arch isn't your guy right now. Quinn is your guy. Stop focusing on the future. Focus on right now. Trust Sark, and you guys are going to have a great season. You'll end up in the playoffs. You'll shock the world. You'll do great things in the playoffs. If you don't shut up, we are going to have Arch come in, and you guys are going to struggle this year. I'm calling it right now. I'm calling it right now. Shut up, Michigan. Or shut up, Texas fans.
I don't think Sark. I think Sark knows better. I don't
I
think
agree.
he.
That's what I said. Listen to Sark.
But I think Sark's the best guy for Texas because he's not going to put up with any shit, and he's going to put results up to back it. I think he's cut from the same cloth as Nick Saban. I mean, he's in the lineage. I think he's the best guy, and I think he has a grip on those kind of things, but more so get dicey in the point that yeah, it'll get pretty annoying. Um, that being said, I don't think Michigan's gonna have enough offense. I think Texas is just better across the board. If Michigan had a little bit more of a solid offense like they did last year, I may be thinking otherwise on this game, especially the fact that it's in Ann Arbor. That is a difficult place to play. That is a difficult place to win. That being said, I think it's going to be a competitive game initially. I do think Texas probably wins and covers by when it's all said and done.
I don't think Texas covers. I don't have confidence in Texas covering. I think my best bet for this game is Texas money line. I think we're going to see a completely different Michigan team. I think we're going to see Donovan Edwards with a chip on his shoulder, and he's going to play Donovan Edwards football. I think once they get the run game started in Michigan, it's going to be a whole different game than what people expect. I do think Texas wins. I think this is going to be a super tight game. I think this is going to be a gritty game. I think this is going to be
Michigan
a
needs
fun
quarterback
game.
play.
But I think Michigan, you got to rely on number one, your running backs. I think your running backs are more important in this game than your quarterback play. And I'm just being honest here because you don't think you're going to get much, and we don't think you're going to get much from your quarterbacks.
When you get
Secondary,
7, 8 guys in the box, though,
so I was going to say secondary. Your quarterbacks have to make the easy throws. Your quarterbacks have to get you out of jams when you have a stacked box. I do think that Michigan struggles last week. I think their struggles last week was a lot of offseason stuff and not knowing who their number one is going into the game, not knowing who their true quarterback is going into the game. But I think this week's going to be a different story. I do think it's going to be a tight game. I really do. I think you're going to see real Michigan football, but I do have Texas. I have Texas beating them. I wouldn't bet the points. I'm betting more money line. If people want to get risky and bet the points, go ahead and beat the points. But I think Texas wins by a touchdown. Not 7.5 points. I think they win by a touchdown. And we're not going to spend a lot of time on this next game, but Nick, I know you love these guys so much. Bowling Green at number 8, Penn State. Penn State is a 34.5-point favorite. One of the things I will mention before I shut up and let Nick go ahead and ramble is that look out for Terrion Stewart from Bowling Green to get a bulk of the work. He's their running back. Last weekend he had 14 carries, 161 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Yes, it was against Fordham, but look for them to try to lean on that a little bit more and try to run the ball. I think this is a mistake. I think the Penn State's run defense is good enough that it's great. I think they're going to stop them, and I don't think much is going to happen with this. I think Penn State's going to cover. I think that Penn State is going to have the game that they should have had this week and that people thought they would have this week. I think Penn State is going to put up 50 or 60 points this week against Bowling Green. Nick, what are your thoughts?
I've seen Penn State not cover in games they should, but I've also seen James Franklin make sure that they do cover. Um, what I'm mostly excited about in this game, I mean, let's be real. If Penn State struggles, it's an utter disappointment. I don't think they're going to. That being said, look out for a couple young guys that are going to be the future of Penn State. One, I have Tyseer Denmark. Kid can play football. It's a good wide receiver. I also have running back. We're going to get our number 3 and probably our number 4. We got a 5-star in the mix. Um, those guys being Cam Wallace and Quinton Martin. You'll probably see some cover if things go the way they should go. You'll get a 1-2 punch that could potentially, but that will replace the 1-2 punch we got now. So I'm excited for that. And lastly, I think you're going to see a freshman quarterback here in Ethan Crunkmeyer, who is another kid that has a lot of potential. Um, I'd love to see these guys get some work and see just a little flash at what's to come in the next few years. Um, but yeah, that being said, Penn State probably wins. They probably cover. I don't see any issue there.
When you talk about winning and you talk about covering, have you ever experienced a game where you can't find any betting odds for it? Besides an Illinois school, because you can't bet on Illinois schools in the state of Illinois. I found one this weekend, and that is Tennessee Tech at number 1 Georgia. You can't find odds anywhere. I Googled the odds. I Googled
Tennessee
the
Tech a
odds.
favor there.
I Googled the odds of the game and could not find them anywhere. We're not going to spend much time on this game. Georgia with a massive W. We both know that. I'm just saying, the big thing going into this game, if Carson Beck could dice up Clemson the way he did in the first half of this Tennessee Tech game, he is going to slice, dice, murder, dig the grave. Carson Beck is going to embarrass Tennessee Tech this week. Do we keep talking about it or do we move on?
No.
So, do you have Georgia winning? Okay.
Yeah.
Another game that you want to talk about, strange week 2 matchups and teams who play tough week 1 schedules playing easy week 2 schedules. Number 5 Notre Dame playing Northern Illinois. It's at Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a 28.5-point favorite. NIU is coming off a huge win against Western Illinois, 54-15. Quarterback Ethan Hampton really showed out. I mean, he was 18 for 20, 328 yards with 5 touchdown passes. With that being said, man, if you're coming off of a tough game like Texas Tech and you looked as good as you did against Texas Tech, I don't see you have any issues with Northern Illinois. Nick, what are your
We're going to be a little hungover. I mean,
it's too early in the season to be hungover, I think. I think if this was week 5, week 6, week 7, I can understand a hangover. This is week 2. These guys are still going to come out hungry, fresh.
No, they're
going
to win the game handedly,
yes.
But I would never doubt anything like a hangover in week 2 out of Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman.
I don't think they're going to have as big of a hangover as you're going to have on Sunday. But with that, you want to talk about fun games this week. So we both agree Notre Dame's going to win that game. We both agree it's going to be a big game for Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's going to put up a lot of points that game. But a big game going into week 2 that we're actually really looking forward to. And we we had a phone call, we texted, we talked quite a bit about how historically bad Iowa's offense continues to be. In the second half of that game last week, Iowa's offense decided they were going to show up, but you're also playing Illinois State, a game that you should be up 40-0 at halftime and not 14-0 at halftime. Um, but with that in mind, Iowa State at Iowa, number 21 Iowa. Iowa's only a 2.5-point favorite. It's two strong defenses going head to head. Iowa's offense last week, they looked like complete garbage. They dug themselves out of the hole in the second half, scoring 13 points in the third, 21 points in the fourth. And I don't know, I'm feeling this is a big upset this week. I'm taking Iowa State, and I'm taking two guys to have big weeks this week for Iowa State. Jalen Noel, wide receiver, 820 yards last season, 135 last week, and Jaden Higgins had 983 yards last season. He was their leading receiver, as well as he had 75 yards last week. I think that they're going to get their passing game going on Iowa. I think they're going to be really successful. I think Iowa's historically great defense is going to look like crap against Iowa State. I think Iowa State's going to win, and I really think they're going to take advantage of Iowa this week. I think Iowa's offense is so bad that Iowa State are going to score some touchdowns this week. I think their offense is so bad that Iowa State is going to score touchdowns because their defense is going to get so worn out.
Listen, when I was about 10 years old, 11 years old, I had trouble batting, like hitting the ball. That's because my first year of kid pitch, I got beams about every single game. I don't know why. I just got drilled with the ball. I was a little afraid of the ball, so at that point, naturally. So I struggled to hit. I had my coach, Randy McEwen. He would be firing that freaking thing in there. He would let some go and beam me as well sometimes. I didn't hit very well when he was pitching BP. Get into the other cage, another dad threw very soft. I started hitting the ball. I got confident. And then I go up against Coach Randy throwing fire, and I would be teeing off. The point I'm trying to get at is Iowa football may have just needed a little bit of confidence. If they finish that game like they started the first half, I'd say this is Illinois State's football game. 100%. This is a game where I'm sorry, Iowa State has all the pieces. They have a respectable offense. This on paper looks like a game that they should win. I'm taking the Hawkeyes at Kinnick Stadium. I think that defense is stifling, and I think the offense is going to be a little bit better than you think.
Well, Cade's stat lines didn't look bad at the end of the game, but a lot of that had to do with work he put in the second half. A team like Iowa should not be playing that tight of a game where their starters are in the second half of the game. I'm just saying.
No, but hey, number 3 Oregon did the same thing.
Yeah. But also, you want to talk about stat lines, and you want to talk about crazy games, and you want to talk about high-scoring games. We're going to kind of move on. I have Iowa State winning. You have Iowa winning. But we're going to move on. Next game we're going to talk about is Middle Tennessee State at Ole Miss, number 6 Ole Miss. We won't spend too much time on this game. We know the outcome. We know Ole Miss is going to win. We know Ole Miss is going to win big. You know Lane Kiffin has a chip on his shoulder. You know Lane Kiffin's going to put up as many points as possible like he did last weekend. I think it's 76 or whatever. But I just wanted to leave it here before we move on to the game after that and say Ole Miss is a 41-point favorite. Lane Kiffin's a GOAT.
Middle Tennessee with the points, baby. Betting the house on it.
Tell the truth.
Just to spite Lane.
You know the truth of this game.
Lane.
As realist, Lane is going to run the score up. Lane is going to score as many points as possible. Lane is
going to lose the starting quarterback or starting receiver or running back.
Lane is going to continue to do great work, and I think this week is going to be the same as it was last week. I think they're going to put up a lot of points. They're going to probably put up 50 or 60 this week, not 76 or whatever it was. But, yeah, I mean, Ole Miss is going to win the game. You agree? Another game we could talk about is Buffalo at number 9, Mizzou. We don't have to spend much time on this one either, but I do think Mizzou, I mean, they're a 34.5 point favorite. Mizzou's going to win. We both agree Mizzou's going to win.
It's just
Buffalo's
hard
not
to
going to win.
it's hard to even gauge anything off of this early with the SEC schedule because, like I said, they don't even play good FCS opponents.
Yeah.
They play trash FCS opponents, and it's like, what do you? If you didn't score 75 points, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
Mizzou by the
Mizzou.
points, probably. Buffalo's
34,
not very
30,
good.
34.5 points is the spread. I think Mizzou by the points as well. I think Luther's going to get a little bit more playing time than he did last week. I think Mizzou's going to win. And I think they're going to cover the spread. Next game we'll talk about, another non-favorable game for us to talk about, is South Florida at number 4 Alabama. USF's really going to lean on their running backs like they did last week in their 48-3 win over BCU. Alabama's defense, they're going to be way too much for South Florida. I see Jaden Milroe having a statement first half. I don't see him playing the full game. I'm going to take Bama winning.
Well, this was the game he got benched last year, and it was the 10 to
Yeah,
3. Was it 10 to 3 finish, or was it 17 to 3 late?
but you got a different Alabama team, and you have a different Jalen
Yeah.
Milroe.
No, no, no. I know. My point is, this was the game that ugly game that he got benched before they realized, no, he's our guy. We're committing to it, and then they ended up going to the Rose Bowl.
Yeah,
Milro's gonna look like
a statement game.
Superman.
It's a statement game for him, especially after all the stuff that happened. It's going to be a statement game, and it's going to be a great game for him. I'm taking Bama too. I'm going to take Alabama by points too.
What's this? What is it?
31 points.
Oh yeah, 31. I'll give 31 to him.
Next game we'll talk about. This one's actually one we'll spend a little bit of time on. It is Tennessee at North Carolina State. I believe this is a neutral site game in Charlotte, if I'm not mistaken. Could be wrong, but I believe this is a neutral site game.
I think you're right.
This is one of my picks for game of the week. I usually don't give my picks for game of the week during the rundown, but this is one of my picks for game of the week. I'm the most excited about this one. Number one, being a Tennessee fan, but number two, this being a tightly contested matchup, just like Texas and Michigan. ESPN and their predictor has Tennessee with an 88.1% chance of winning. I'm excited to see Nico in 4 quarters of football. I'm super excited to see him in 4 quarters of meaningful football, not including the Cheez-Its
Yes.
Bowl last year. Both teams are coming off of a big win. The problem is NC State had a very close win against Western Carolina. They looked like crap last week. Tennessee is technically a 4-point favorite as of now. I can see those odds shifting as the week goes on. I bet Saturday morning they end up closer to a touchdown favorite. Just saying. I don't see Nico having the numbers that he had last week, but I do see Dylan Sampson being more active in the run game, the running back. But I also see Nico being more active in the run game this week as well. I see them opening up their offense as much as possible against NC State, really showing what they're capable of, really showing what they're going to be moving forward in the season. I don't see them airing the ball out as much as they did last week. I see them showing the whole package against NC State because it means something. But the most important player of the game, James Pierce Jr., is going to play 4 quarters of football this week, and he is going to be a pain in the rear for NC State's offensive tackles. Nick, what are your thoughts about this game? I am taking Tennessee to win. I am not taking the money line, or I'm taking the money line and not the spread. I think
The spread. What is it? What is it?
4 points.
Four.
I
Ugh, ew.
think it's an awkward spread. I mean, I'm going to take money line to be safe because this could be a gritty game. It ends up being a field goal game. Last second drive down, kick a field goal, win the game. I'm not betting on that. It's too risky for me. And plus, I only bet money line for my team. I don't bet any other options in the gambling pool when it comes to my teams. So yeah, I'm
I
taking
never bet.
Tennessee.
I never bet the team that I know the most about because
I overthink it.
somehow in the world I'm gonna be the reason that they lose, and I will blame myself.
Hmm.
That being said, this game, my my initial overreaction to week one, after seeing how Tennessee performed and see how NC State performed, I was like, Tennessee's gonna dog walk these guys. After thinking about it a little more, I have changed my mind. Um, I do think Tennessee wins. I think they do cover. This could be a game where they pull away mid third quarter and or fourth quarter and start rolling. But I think that you have a veteran signal caller at NC State, and Tennessee's one weakness is their secondary. That could be problematic. On the flip side, you have a stout defense with great coaching against a brand new starting quarterback, a first year starter. A great first year starter, but nevertheless a first year starter. It's going to be a good matchup. I think it's going to be a good game for most of that game. If Tennessee just starts pounding on them, I think you really need to nationally start recognizing what this Tennessee football team is.
I agree. This is a big statement game in week 2. It means a lot moving forward in the season. So who do you have winning the game? I have Tennessee. I have them by the money line.
Tennessee,
Tennessee?
I'll give him the points too.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Next game we'll talk about. We won't spend too much time on this one. It's Western Michigan at number 2, Ohio State. Ohio State's a 38-point favorite. I was very unimpressed with them. We've talked about this already against Akron. Western Michigan played a really gritty game against Wisconsin last week, which that was a fun game to watch until the end. But I see Ohio State winning this game. I see them coming out guns a-blazing, but I don't see them winning by 38 points. I really don't.
No,
I think that they started off too slow last week, and I have a strange feeling they're going to start off slow every game. I think Ohio State's going to be one of those teams that they start off slow, and I think they wake up for big games. I think they win a lot of games. They potentially win all of their games, but I think they're going to start off slow this game, and I don't see them winning by 38 points. I see, with what I've seen from Western Michigan so far this season, they're going to play tough football against Ohio State. I picked Ohio State money line.
I think that's safe. I'm going to be interested really to see what kind of team comes out to start that football game. This is supposed to be a team that's going to win the national title. They spent all that money to do so. They need to start playing like it. And I think that means you need to come out and start getting after it from that very first whistle. So be curious to see what they do.
Agree. So you got Ohio State winning, but not by the points. Next
I don't
game,
feel safe taking the points.
understand me either. I really don't, especially after watching what I watched last week. And yes, they did, beat the tar out of Akron, but it took them 2 quarters of football to find a rhythm, and that's
Yeah.
not okay when you're in that type of if you're being held that highly in regarded or that highly regarded. Excuse me. Next game we'll talk about is Joey Aguilar going to outperform Cade Klubnik this week? Is App State Joey going to come out there and going to really show that Clemson needs work in the portal? I don't think so. Clemson's a 17-point favorite. I think that Clemson wins the game. I think Clemson comes out and they have a statement game this week. And I've said statement game several times, but I think more of a bounce back game and not a statement game. I think they're going to come out, and App State has been known to play gritty football in tough games. I mean, look at the game
Upset
against
games.
look at the game against North Carolina a couple years ago. I think it was 2 years ago.
That was 2 years ago.
I mean, that was a 40-point game on both sides. I think Clemson's going to win. I think Clemson's going to come back. They're going to have a great bounce back game. They're going to find their rhythm on offense. They're going to find their rhythm on defense, and I feel like they're going to play really well this weekend. What about you?
I'm not taking them to cover. I don't trust them enough, and App State is terrifying, a terrifying a terrifying G5 to play. You just never know. I don't know what it is. It's this aura they have, this dust that the college football gods sprinkle out there. I don't know what it is. I don't take Clemson to cover, but I do take them to win.
All right. Well, the last game we're going to talk about is going to be Boise State at number 7 Oregon. Before we get started, let me do something real quick. All right, Nick. Well, we've talked about in the past. I grew up, only liking Boise State because of the color of their field and all that stuff. And in college, I watched Boise State and became a fan of Boise State, or followed Boise State a little bit more because of the fact that they were the only games on that we watched. So I do have this Boise State flag right here, right? So this weekend, I am definitely repping the Oregon Ducks. I think the Oregon Ducks are going to show you how good of a football team they are this weekend. I think Boise State's defense is that horrible. I think that Boise State's offense is really going to play decent football, but I think there are levels to this game, and you can agree with me on this. I think there are levels between the G5 teams and your Power Four, we'll say, in this instance. There's levels to this game, and I think Oregon is going to play so much better than they did last week in the sense that I think they're going to score more touchdowns. I think they're going to have a lot of success. If Georgia Southern was able to do what they did offensively to Boise State, if Oregon's able to do what Georgia Southern did, Oregon is going to beat the tar out of Boise State. Oregon right now is a 19.5-point favorite. I won't be surprised if they cover. I'm going to be honest with you. But one thing I will say is Ashton Genetti is going to show that that he is a very good football player in this game. I am telling you he's going to have over 100 yards rushing this game, and he's going to have a touchdown. I am telling you that Maddox Madsen is not going to keep up with Dylan Gabriel. I promise you right now, Oregon is going to beat the brakes off of Boise State this weekend. Nick, what are your thoughts? And that was very passionate of me and very fired up of me. So I'm sorry about that.
Did you know that Oregon has never beat Boise State? They've played 3 times.
LeGarrette Blunt.
This is, I believe, the first time they lost. Always reminds me of that.
The punch heard
I
around the
just
world. The punch heard around the
think
world, and he went on to have an incredible NFL career.
I just think that, like you said, Boise State's defense is abysmal. Oregon has no choice but to bounce back after how awful they played. Um,
And I don't even say they played awful, Nick. They just didn't score.
you gotta, but so that's what makes me worry about taking taking them by the points because how do you not just punch the damn thing in against an FCS opponent? You know what I mean? Do they lack toughness? Do they what is it? What happened? This is an overreaction. I am going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I think I wholeheartedly agree with you. I just think that Boise defense is too bad to not score 40 points when you have the firepower that you have on that Oregon offense. Give me Oregon, give me the points.
Agree, agree. Ashton Genetti is going to have a great game though against stout
I
defense.
hope
This
I
is the
hope he
game
torches
this is the
that
game that's going to
defense.
finally get him over with that national recognition that he's always deserved. Games of the week this week, Nick. I will go with mine first. I have number 14 Tennessee at NC State for reasons already talked about. I have number 3 Texas at number 10 Michigan, and then my last game of the week pick is one that we didn't cover because we covered the top 10 teams and their matchups and a couple fringe games. I have Colorado at Nebraska. Nebraska is currently a 7.5-point favorite. It is Shador Sanders versus a young phenom quarterback of Dylan Raiola. Dylan thinks he's Patrick Mahomes. He pretends to be Patrick Mahomes. He wears his hair, his mustache, his goatee like Patrick Mahomes, and he makes throws like Patrick Mahomes. I mean, some of those sidearm passes that he threw, and then the poise. I believe he threw a touchdown or interception this week, and he just literally came back to it the next play and was just like
That's
went straight back to that
went
same
straight
guy.
back to the same guy.
I mean, this kid, if he keeps, barring injuries, if he keeps on the trajectory that he showed that he's going to be on as a true freshman, the kid is going to be the next superstar of college football. I truly agree that. I think Rayola played like a senior quarterback this week. He is truly a future superstar in the making. I think a lot of points are going to be scored this game, but I think Nebraska is going to win this game for the first time since 2010. I don't believe they've only played 3 times since 2010, but 14 years. I think Nebraska is going to get that win. Thoughts?
Colorado's defense is terrible. Nebraska's defense is not terrible. Nebraska has an offense and a quarterback with swagger and they can trust. I think they have a bone to pick after last year, and they have the right head coach to instill that fire in them to make them go out and take care of business. I think Nebraska is on the right path. Dylan Raiola, man, this kid I was talking about it earlier. You have when Drew Aller was our guy, his starting quarterback. I'm like, man, this kid just seems so like he kind of immature. You know what I mean? Like Drew now versus last year, night and day difference. This was a kid. He was a kid last year. I don't get that same feeling from Dylan Raiola, and he's still a true freshman. He's not a sophomore. He is a true freshman. That kid has ice in his veins. I mean, he's cut. I mean, you know what he's got the family, you know, gene. I don't know what it is, but I think that that kid is a freaking star. I think he's gonna. I think he's gonna be a star. I'm gonna take Nebraska. What did you say? It was 7.5,
7.5. Yep.
and it's at Nebraska too. I think Nebraska has the better defense. I think Nebraska is better coached, more disciplined. They have home field advantage, and I think they have enough defensively to hold Colorado from scoring more than they're going to score. I don't know if
I
I want to take the points, but give me the money line. What's the um what's the total on it?
I don't have that off the top of my head. Didn't write down all the degenerate gambling stuff.
There's going to be more points scored this year than last year.
I agree. Well, there was a lot of points scored last year. What was it? 36-14 last year, right?
Well, I'm saying on both sides of the field.
Both sides of the field. Yeah. I think
That's a total.
I'm taking Nebraska, and I'm actually taking them with points as well. I think Nebraska's going to come out guns a blazing. I think
I
after
just want to
last
see
week,
Raiola on
well,
on a primetime game,
well, and
and
I also
I
think
will
after
too.
last week, I think Dion gave a backhanded compliment to Raiola, but he also really complimented Raiola. And I think that is Dion's way of saying, hey, this kid's dangerous, and I know he's dangerous, but we're not afraid of him. But really being afraid
I
of
would
him.
be really, I'd be terrified of him because your
I,
defense is horrendous,
I think this is going to be a quarterback duel.
and it's gonna be fun to watch. I mean, because Raiola can play ball, and we know what Colorado is, but to a casual and in the media,
Yep.
they're these
Four-time,
behemoths,
four-time
right?
defending national champions
Yeah,
in
yeah.
their own right. Yeah.
So that being said, Raiola coming out and on national TV, primetime football game against this team and just torching, he's going to have a lot of recognition.
I agree. So, what are your games of the week, Nick?
None different than yours, to be honest with you. I looked across and there's not a ton across the board that are just big time matchups. But what I've been so excited about is looking on a week to week basis, given the new conference realignment. There is an intriguing matchup every single Saturday, and I'm so looking forward to it. You're gonna have helmet games. You're gonna have, the USC's versus the Penn States, the Texases, and playing, SEC opponents on a week to week basis. You're gonna have new matchups that have never happened or not happened in a long time, and I couldn't be more excited.
You talk about new and fun matchups, and you talk about looking forward at the schedule each week. There is one thing that we look forward to each week, and that is the Toilet Bowl game of the week. Man, remember, the criteria is this is two bad teams that you think it's going to be a fun game because they're so bad, or just two bad teams that you think it's just going to be bad football in general. My Toilet Bowl game of the week, Duke at Northwestern. It's a Friday night game. Northwestern is a 2.5 point favorite. Last year's lovable slash winner slash loser, excuse me. Duke has really taken a step back since Elko, I think, and I think Riley's departure as well had a lot to do with that. Both teams are 1-0. Malik Murphy's coming in to take the reins again this week with Duke after his Texas run. I think he could edge them over Northwestern, with Northwestern being the favorite at 2.5 points. So I'm actually taking Duke, and I'm also taking Duke money line. One of the things I will say to watch out for is Mike Wright. He's Northwestern's quarterback, dual threat guy. I think he led the team in both passing and rushing last week. So be on the lookout for him. But I think that Duke's winning this game. I think Duke's winning by 10 points. What are your thoughts? What are you thinking? And what's your game of the week? Toilet Bowl game of the week, excuse me.
I'm giving it to Duke. I got to ride with my guy Manny Diaz. Love the guy. I miss him. Tom, you're great, but Manny just had a certain swagger, just beautiful hair on the sidelines, all suave.
Do you know who
He's a
Manny?
stud.
Do you know who Manny Diaz reminds me a lot of?
Who's that?
Do you watch the NBA at all, or have you ever followed the NBA?
I mean, not that much, but
If I said the name Eric Spoelstra,
oh yeah, yeah. I know who you're talking about.
perfect
Manny's
hair, perfect hair,
Manny's a
never
little
out
more
of place.
handsome.
Yeah, well, Spoelstra was handsome when he was younger, when the Heat were really winning like they were with LeBron and all them. But I think Spoelstra and Manny Diaz, when I think about hair and I think about premium hair game on the sidelines or the side of the court, I mean, those guys are neck and neck. Premium, well, Spoelstra now, I think he has a bald patch in the back. But, I mean, first team all hair.
Bad look. Yeah, yeah. I can't think of another guy in college football that has hair like Manny Diaz does.
Well, you're forgetting somebody. Mike Gundy.
Oh, that's a
That's
different kind of swagger.
Manny and Spolstra are here. Manny and college football's here. I think Gundy is maybe like over here. Just like absurd, asinine
Cliff
haircuts that.
Cliff Kingsbury used to really do the damn thing too back in the day. We're getting sidetracked. This is why
Sorry.
we talk for 2 hours. And
Anyways, what's your toilet bowl game of the week before we get to this closing?
East Carolina versus Old Dominion. Old Dominion is a 1.5 point favorite. ECU's coming off a big win against Norfolk State, 42-3. They're ready to go in and do the damn thing. Old Dominion played South Carolina and only lost by 4 points. Give me Old Dominion by the points. I think that 1.5 is disrespectful. Give me the
I
Monarchs.
I agree. I'm going the Monarchs too. Shout out to
Let me also say real quick, as unfortunate as it is, I searched Old Dominion on Google, and apparently there's a country band, and they popped up way before the university and the football program did. So there's beyond the shadow of a doubt, this is the toilet bowl game of the week.
agree. Old Dominion is actually a really popular country band, so it's funny that you said that. But shout out to Old Dominion. Shout out to the Monarchs. Shout out to NCAA 14 when I used to take Old Dominion and run them up to national championship contenders. AKA, I used to run them up and then move on as an OC to a head coaching job at another institution.
Stepping
But
stone.
with that closing, man, it's time to say goodbye to our followers. Most of you probably didn't make it all 2 hours of this podcast. Some of you who really love us, like Damian Berkla, probably listen to us on the treadmill. My closing remarks, number one, guys, it was a fun show. Had a blast. It's been a long day. I've been up since 4:30 this morning. Had travel for work this morning. It is currently 11:18 at night on a Thursday. Watching college football or pro football. If you're looking at me, keep looking over to the left. I have a TV right here to the left, and I was watching that great game that literally ended by inches on a 2-point conversion play with Kansas City beating Baltimore. But man, it's been a long day. It's been a very stressful day, but it's been a fun day. It's been a fun night to talk college football with you guys. I'm looking forward to this weekend's games. Might give you a couple live reactions on Instagram if there's any updates coming or anything like that. But man, I enjoyed it, Nick. I had a blast today. What are your thoughts? What are your closing thoughts?
Yeah, if anybody by chance makes it this deep, please let me know because I don't think I would. We gotta cut down our
We
talking
do.
sometimes
We
here.
do, man. Shout out to Connor Stallions. We really do.
Oh, what the hell with that guy? All right, that's all I got, man. It's time to wrap it up.
Yeah, man. I was close to dozing off about halfway through there just because I'm exhausted, man. I'm running out of
Lose
gas.
track.
So
Time flies when you're having fun.
time flies when you're talking college football. As I mentioned when we first started this in week zero, or excuse me, episode zero, we get on the phone and we start talking. Next thing you know, our wives and girlfriends are mad at us because of the fact that we're talking way too long. So this is what we do. This is our thing. This is the Saturday sermon. Always remember one thing, and that's to keep college football holy. See you guys. Good night.